Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, where we review stories that beautiful people like yourselves post on the internet. We got two stories for you today. Story 1. I'm 57 female. Daughter 30 female is getting married for the third time. I do not want to pay for her wedding. Feel like a bad parent. I should start by saying that my daughter is an only child. She has always been our quote-unquote princess, so to speak. And she's received everything material that a girl could ask for. Before you criticize my husband, her father, and I for spoiling her, we do realize that we shouldn't have given her everything from a young age, but we didn't know any better back then. And we had the money, we're quite well off, so we figured why not support our only child. My husband owns his own business, and I'm a school teacher. Together we make decent money, and I am looking to retire in the near future. When we first started out, I stayed at home and my husband worked an office job. And so my daughter has been pampered with all of my attention and her father's support. She is now going to be married for the third time in her short life. Her only job is occasionally supply teaching in the same school board I work at. So she doesn't have much of a big career yet, but I do hope she will find work. I'll spare you the long of it. She married her high school boyfriend at 22 years old. And they divorced less than 2 years later in a bitter fight. The wedding was lavish, as it was her first and we truly believed that they would make it work. I guess my husband and I also saw through rose-colored glasses since we were married very young as well. And we are approaching our 35th anniversary. My husband and I pitched in around $25,000 for the wedding ceremony and reception, and perhaps another $3,000 for their honeymoon to Europe. The second time she was proposed to by another man she was dating. He was a hard-working blue-collar man, but his family didn't have much money. Again, she asked if we could help out with her wedding, that it was true love this time around. We met the man and he was a stand-up, wholesome person, and so, a year after that, my daughter, then 27, was married to his second husband. We paid for most of the wedding costs and the honeymoon, to the tune of $43,000. Her then husband's mother was a nurse, and his father was a deadbeat. They didn't provide much when it came to the wedding itself, and I admit, the husband and I did harbor ill will toward the fact that her husband's father's name was clearly printed on the reception and invitations as a generously contributing member of the wedding party. But that's another story. And they divorced because of money issues less than 3 years later. We, tired by this time, forked over money for her divorce costs and try to regroup our finances. We do have a comfortable nest egg saved up for our post-retire life. I would like to travel the world and maybe buy a small lake house with my husband. He also enjoys woodworking as a hobby. But now my daughter, who has begun dating another man, has excitedly showed us that she's engaged once again. The man in question proposed less than a year into their dating, and she's elated more than anything, because after her second divorce, she didn't think any man would want her anymore. My daughter has hinted at wedding costs and brings some bridal magazines and ideas for cakes and dresses and venues, and I want to be happy for her happiness. But there is a voice inside me that is screaming, enough. We have spent almost over $140,000 of my husband's and mine's money for my daughter's 2 failed marriages, wedding, reception, honeymoon costs, divorce costs, and I cannot believe she is thinking of planning another lavish ceremony at our expense. I've tried suggesting maybe this time she should opt for a small backyard ceremony this time. But she turns it around on us and says that we don't believe in her happiness and that we are being cheap, as she's our only daughter and her father and I are quite well off. Which, to be fair, she's right. I am at a loss of what to say to her. Twice married and divorced only daughter is getting married for the third time, where the first 2 times her affluent father and I paid for a majority of the wedding costs and divorce costs. This time around, we want to convince her to have a smaller ceremony, but she says we are being cheap and that we don't care for her happiness. Feel like a bad parent. If your daughter has truly found love in this third relationship, then it shouldn't depend on an expensive wedding. You and your husband should firmly tell your daughter that you are not going to pay for her third wedding. If she wants an expensive wedding, she should get a job and pay for it herself. And if you can't get over your guilt, You might want to consider seeing a good therapist to help you sort through all of your feelings. You are doing your daughter no favors by continuing to fork over money. Sounds to me like she's more in love with the lavish weddings than with the man she chooses to stand in to play the role of groom. You decline to pay for her wedding. She's 30, has been married twice, and she and her fiancé should shoulder the cost of the wedding. You may offer to pay for a small reception or post-wedding meal if you're comfortable with it, but your desire not to fork over more money is reasonable. You are about to retire, and your daughter needs to keep that in mind. Investing in your child's happiness does not equal spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on short-term relationships. My cousin has been married 5 times, and the last one stuck, and most of them were before she was 35. However, she saved up and paid for every single wedding and reception herself. It was sad to watch, but she didn't expect her mom to shoulder the cost of her failed relationships. You mentioned that her second marriage failed over money issues. I wonder from what you have mentioned here if part of that was her wanting more than what their combined income could provide. In the past, she has gotten pretty much whatever she wanted from her parents, and her husband wasn't able to do the same. I guess the point of the above is that giving your child everything and not having boundaries does cause issues. It sounds as if she's barely able to support herself at 30 and is constantly using you guys as a crutch. Oh, don't pay for her third wedding either. Explain to her that you guys are looking at retirement, as you should be, and simply cannot do this for the third time. Hello, it's been a long time. I wanted to retroactively thank everyone for the advice and the anger. Must admit that hearing others rage about my situation was pretty cathartic for me. I wasn't going to log back in to post an update. I couldn't even recall the password for this throwaway account, but so many of you gave me excellent advice that I feel I must give an update, sad as it is. Long story short, my daughter is getting her third divorce. We're no longer on speaking terms, and she has broken our hearts. Short story long, as many of you predicted, she threw a great big tantrum when her father and I told her explicitly that we would not be paying for the wedding this time around. We said we would buy her a wedding dress and the cake, but that would be the end of it, that whatever else she wanted would have to come from her and her husband's pocketbook. She said we don't care for her happiness. She cried. She said that we were selfish. Everything all of you said was going to happen. All these things hurt so much to hear because they aren't true. We do care very much for her, but enough was simply enough. She went so far as to chuck her wedding planner binder into the backyard pool, which was grotesque to watch. We asked to meet the fiancé in question over dinner. What a gem he was. Tattoos all over her knuckles and his neck. Showed up to meet us in sweatpants and an ill-fitting hoodie. Didn't even shake our hand or introduce himself properly. He looked like a trailer trash. When we asked what his occupation was, he said he was, quote-unquote, sound technician, which made me feel embarrassed for being so prejudiced. But after a quick conversation at the dinner table, where he behaved in the most disgusting manner, turns out that he's a freelance DJ. At 39 years old, I believe one should at least be put together, not living with other roommates and working at clubs on weekends. My daughter, I do not know what was wrong with her. She looked at him with such adoring eyes, as if he were the best thing since sliced bread. We doubted that he could provide for himself, let alone a family. I don't know if this was a sign, but the sight of this man boy solidified our decision to not finance a drop of our daughter's third wedding. We still agreed to pay for the cake and the dress, but no more. We even had doubts that maybe this thug was only planning to marry our daughter for the money. We assumed it was true when we found out that she had been paying for a few months' worth of his rent that he could not afford to pay out of her own pocket. Like I said, I don't know what was wrong with her. We gave her a budget of $13,000 for a beautiful dress and maybe another $2,000 for the cake. The wedding planning itself was a disaster, as my daughter had a meltdown over every single little thing that went wrong, even though we tried to tell her that she could use the $15,000 budget to plan the entire wedding instead of just spending it on the dress and cake alone. That was our intention, that maybe she could scale back the dress and cake for a more humble affair. Maybe it would teach her the value of $1. She would not budge. She did not invite us to the wedding, let alone the reception. We don't even know how it was, as we were not shown any photographs afterward. I spent the entire week crying when I found out that she had left us out of the wedding party. She came back a few times with a U-Haul and her disgusting husband to take her possessions from our home and moved in with him. While my husband and I were gone on a vacation to New Orleans right before Christmas, we had received several voicemails, all from our daughter. Her voice was slurring, as if she had been heavily drinking or on drugs. She said that she was going to divorce as he was an effing deadbeat who couldn't even treat her to a nice dinner. She said she's had to sell her engagement ring to pay for the rent, that she's still living with his roommates, and that this is the part that just sends me into anger. That if only we had paid for her wedding and helped her buy a home with him, this wasn't even discussed between us. I don't know where she got this idea from, that she would have made this marriage last. If we had given her more money. My God, what have we done? I am shaking with anger just typing this. My husband wanted to leave her a seething voicemail. I talked him out of it. As far as we know, she has moved forward with the divorce. We will be here for her. We will take her back into our homes, but only if she wishes. At this point, we haven't heard anything from her, and she does not pick up her phone. It is so easy to blame ourselves for being bad parents, and I just feel so awful. She is our only child, and if any of our nieces or nephews behaved this way to our siblings, we would have cut them out of the family in a second. But we can't. She is our only child, now 31 years old, and a thrice divorcee. It pains me so much what has happened over the last year. I feel like I've lost a daughter. Just my impressions here. It isn't the men she wants, it's the wedding themselves, the attention she receives. It seems like she is attracted to that specifically. She's so used to being special that she is trying to increase the amount of times and ways that she feels special. Please, if she does ask to move back in with you, and I know you won't be able to say no, have a caveat that she will attend counseling regularly to help her discover the root of her issues. There is something in her life that she isn't getting, and she's trying to achieve it by marrying over and over again. A therapist or a psychiatrist may be her only chance. 3 divorce settlements and she can't afford her own wedding. WTF? It's rich that she's upset you won't respect the tradition when her vows don't mean shit to her. I understand your feelings, but sometimes you need to set feelings to the side and do what you know is right. Personally, I wouldn't have given her anything for her 3rd wedding, because she clearly doesn't understand the value of marriage, and I'm not even a huge advocate for it. And after the way she's treated you since, she certainly would not be welcome back into my house. She's going to keep taking advantage of you and walking all over you for as long as you allow it. It's time for her to grow the F up and take some responsibility and consequences for her own actions. Guys, if you are enjoying this video so far and you want to be an a-hole to the like button when they tell you how they like their coffee, place a completely disproportionate amount of sugar to cream ratio. Story 2. Could use advice or at least borrow your ears or eyes. 37 male married to 38 female. I'm over it. Thanks in advance. I'll try to keep this short as possible but give all the details I can. Married to my high school sweetheart for 16 years now. 2 kids, ages 14 and 8. It's been basically a sexless marriage from the very beginning. In 16 years, we've probably made love maybe 30 times. No exaggeration. 30 times in 16 years. None in the past 3 to 4 years. She hates sex. She thinks any type of sex is gross and doesn't touch me at all, aside from an occasional hug or a kiss goodbye. 12 years ago, she had an emotional affair that led to a one-time physical affair with a coworker, resulted in a pregnancy, and ultimately an abortion. He didn't stick around for any of it, while I picked up the pieces and tried to put things back together for the sake of my then 4-year-old daughter. It never really healed. I just swallowed the bitterness and moved on. Now here we are 12 years later, sexless, a loveless marriage, as she puts it. I've tried everything I know to do. Romance, flowers, cards. I've begged her to get help or get to the root of the problem, and she says she will but doesn't. I've done all I can, and I'm not sure I can do this anymore. I'm pretty sure she has some mild depression. I've asked her to talk to someone about it, and again, She says she will, but hasn't as of yet. I'm an attractive guy. I take good care of myself and I'm good to my kids. Good career. I'm not a bum here. Solid father, husband, employee. Although grumpier than average perhaps. Maybe due to the sexless marriage? I do love her as a friend and a partner for the kids. I care about her, but I am certainly not in love with her any longer. Not after 12 or 16 years of rejection and what I feel is abandonment. I've been faithful through all this in spite of having chances to blow off some steam. I have told her previously that when the kids are grown, 10 years, I'm out. My idea of retirement is a small farm, while hers is travel and spending money. That is, our long-term goals aren't even compatible. I'm sure this ultimatum hurt her feelings, but it's just the truth. Anyway. TLDR. How long should I stay in a loveless, sexless marriage with a woman who was my childhood sweetheart? I never got over her affair 12 years ago, but I have kids and I absolutely want to do the best for them that I can. I've tried everything I know to rekindle the romance, but I get nothing in return and no hope of a physical relationship with this woman. Edit to add, it's not just about sex either. I want an intimate relationship with a good woman. I don't want to be criticized all the time about every little thing. I want a real relationship, not a roommate raising kids together. It sounds like your marriage is a decomposing corpse, and you both would be happier after a divorce. Try to work it out as amicably as possible, but of course have legal backup. There's any disagreement on how a divorce would play out. I feel for you. I know you're doing this because you're a good person, but you're forgetting to be good to yourself. I don't think your offspring know how upset you are, and you're fooling yourself. Cut the cord, take your kids out and have some fun. You only get one go at this whole earth thing, as far as I'm concerned, and you sound like you deserve a good time. Best of luck. I think the big question here is what is really the source of the problem? You mentioned she thinks of sex as repulsive, yet she had sex with someone else. Clearly all the details aren't there. There isn't a cut and dry rule for what you need to do, but as long as you can still be there and provide for your kids, I see no reason why you can't leave earlier. You're understandably miserable. You've tried to make it work. Some things are just out of your control. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Reply: I want to be happy. I want my kids to be happy. I even want her to be happy, but I'm not sure I can do that at this point. If we divorce, I'll absolutely continue being there for my kids. They're everything to me. So I posted this last week and received tons of great feedback. Thank you for that. It's a week later, even though I've told her in the past that I'm done, and didn't mean it obviously. This time I am serious. Apparently she realizes I'm serious, because she scheduled an appointment with a counselor to get help for her suspected depression and other issues. Her first visit was yesterday. I didn't ask for details because it's none of my business, but she did say the counselor referred to her to a psychiatrist. I've written out all the bills on the spreadsheet and gave her the list and showed her mine. I took the bulk of them, as my salary is higher and I don't want her to struggle. I'm also starting to look at houses within my kids' school district because that's a non-negotiable from either side. I guess I'm posting because I feel a little guilty. If she's indeed depressed, and I'm sure she is, I feel like a bad guy for leaving while she's going through this. However, this is something I've begged her to do for over a decade to no avail. I can't throw a good heart after a bad situation any longer. Also, it's hard to explain, but at times I feel elated when I'm planning my departure. Free, alive, and then I feel a bit guilty about that too. I'll still be completely involved with my kids. 50% of the time they'll stay with me, and I'll still pick at least one of them up for school in the mornings. Pick them up every day evening like I always do. Every other weekend is my plan for them to stay with me, as well as during the week. Love my kids, and I can't abandon them. Like someone told me last week, quote, "You can be a great dad without being an unhappy husband," end quote. TLDR. If you see my previous post, you'll know why I'm trying to leave. Over 16 years in a dead marriage for the kids, even though I was cheated on 12 years ago. I finally hit my limit, and I'm planning my departure. Here's the thing. She was perfectly happy with her life until you decided you wanted to move on. She's only accepting help now because she thinks it will save her marriage. She has no interest in getting better, because she doesn't even think that she has a problem. Do not be fooled by her attempts to work things out. She's only acting out of fear of being alone. It's not because she loves you. It's not because she loves the kids. It's because she suddenly realizes that she's been a selfish POS for all these years, and now it's going to cost her. Follow through with the divorce and go find your happiness. Edit. I would also add that you can be a supportive friend to your soon-to-be ex-wife without feeling obligated to stay with her. If I am wrong and she truly wants help, that's great, but make sure she knows that you are only offering help as a friend, not a husband, and that the divorce will continue no matter what. Once you make that distinction, you will see if she actually is interested in bettering herself, or if she's just being manipulative. You're not a bad guy. You deserve to be happy, and after 16 years, it is obvious to you that it will not happen with this woman. You know what is worse than 16 years down the tubes with this woman? 17 years. Don't lose heart. You will find someone who you will be happy with. Don't feel guilty. She could have dealt with this a long time ago on her own, and she chose not to. Each person has a responsibility to their SO to listen and address the issues. She clearly chose to just ignore them. On the other side of this, she cheated on you and it resulted in her being pregnant from the OM. You clearly are a better man than me. There is no way I would have stayed after that. You gave her another chance to work on herself, and she failed again. It's time to you to put yourself back on track. Even if your thread was slowly about sex, you should never feel guilty for not getting your needs met. You did the right thing by trying to communicate this with her, and she just did not do it. Divorce and move on with your life. Guys, that was it for today's stories. Thank you very much for listening. Please remember to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel to keep listening to these stories. Thanks again, guys, for all of your support. We will be seeing you in the next one.